The Diocese of Porto and Santa-Rufina is a Suburbicarian see of the Holy Roman Church and a diocese of the Catholic Church in Italy. It was formed from the union of two Suburbicarian sees of Rome. From 1967, the diocese has had both a titular cardinal bishop and a resident bishop who handles the diocesan business. Early Christian history of Porto. Porto was in ancient times Portus, the chief harbour of Rome. It owes its origin to the port built by Claudius on the right of the Tiber, opposite Ostia. Trajan enlarged the basin, and in a short time there grew around it a city which soon became independent of Ostia. It was near Porto that Julius Nepos compelled Emperor Glycerius to abdicate. During the Gothic War, the town served the Goths and the Byzantines as a base of operations against Rome. In the 9th and 10th centuries it was sacked on several occasions by the Saracens. In 849 Pope Leo IV fortified it and established there a colony of Corsicans for the defense of the coast and the neighboring territory, but the city continued to decay. Christianity was early established there. Several martyrs of Porto are known, including Herculanus, Hyacinthus, Martialis, Saturninus, Epictetus, Mapalis and Felix. The place was also famous as the probable see of Saint Hippolytus. In 314 Gregory was bishop. The great Zenodochium, or hospice, of Pamatius was built about 370. Among the other bishops should be mentioned Donatus, who built the Basilica of St. Eutropius; Felix, a contemporary of Gregory the Great; Joanne, legate to the Sixth General Council; Gregorius, who accompanied Pope Constantine to Constantinople; Gregorius II, Citonatus, present at the consecration of the anti-Pope Constantine; Giovanni, Stefano, Radualdus. He acted contrary to his instructions on the occasion of the difficulties with Photius at Constantinople, and who was deposed for having prevaricated in connection with the divorce of Lothair II of Lorraine; Formosus, who became pope; Warpert, Valentino, Silvestro, Chrysogno, Costantino, Benedictus, who consecrated the anti-Pope Leo VIII, Gregorio, who built the irrigation system of the territory of the diocese, Benedetto, Giovanni, Rolando. Giovanni joined the obedience of anti-Pope Clement III in 1084. Giovanni, Mauritius, sent by Pope Pascal II to establish order in religious affairs in the Holy Land; Callistus II, who united to the see of Porto the other Suburbicarian see of Silva Candida or Santa-Rufina. Early Christian history of Rufina. Santa-Rufina grew up around the Basilica of the Holy Martyrs Sts. Rufina and Secunda on the Via Aurelia, 14 miles from Rome. The basilica is said to have been begun by Pope Julius I, and was finished by St. Damasus. In the 9th century this town was destroyed by the Saracens, and the efforts of Pope Leo IV and Pope Sergius III were unable to save it from total ruin. All that remains of the remnants of the ancient basilica and a chapel. The first notice of it as an episcopal see dates from the 5th century, when its bishop Adeodatus was present at the councils held by Pope Symmachus. Its bishop St. Valentinus, vicar of Rome during the absence of Pope Vigius, had his hands cut off by Totila. Among its other bishops mention should be made of Tiberius, Ursus, Nicetas, Hildebrand, Peter, whose jurisdiction over the Leonine city, the Trastevere, and the insula Tiberina was confirmed. The residence of the bishops of Silva Candida was on the insula Tiberina beside the church of Sts. Adalbert and Paulinus, while that of the bishops of Porto was on the same island near the church of San Giovanni. The bishops of Silva Candida, moreover, enjoyed great prerogatives in relation with the ceremonies of the Basilica of St. Peter. The most famous of these prelates was Cardinal Humbertus, who accompanied Leo Leo IX from Burgundy to Rome. He was appointed Bishop of Sicily by the Pope, but, having been prevented by the Normans from landing on the island, he received the see of Silva Candida, and later was sent to Constantinople to settle the controversies aroused by Michael Carolarius. He wrote against the errors of the Greeks and against Berengarius. The last legitimate bishop was Maynardo of Pomposo. During the schism of anti-Pope Clement III there was a pseudo-cardinal bishop Adalbert, later anti-Pope Adalbert. Historically, the Bishop of Porto became the second cardinal, the Bishop of Ostia being the first, and officiated on Mondays in the Lateran Basilica. He obtained, moreover, the other rights of the Bishop of Santa-Rufina, but lost jurisdiction over the Leonine city and its environs when they were united to the city of Rome. Bishops. To 1500 Pietro Senix, a partisan of anti-Pope Anacultus II from 1130. Theodwin, Bishop of S. Rufina, only a German, sent on many missions to Germany and to the Holy Land. Giovanni, pseudo-cardinal of Anacultus II. Cincio de Gregorio. Bernard, who exerted himself to bring about peace between Pope Adrian IV and Frederick Barbarossa. Guglielmo Marengo. Teodino de Aroni, who examined the cause of Thomas Becket. Bobo. Pietro Galacia. Benedetto. Cincio Sansi. Conrad of Uruk. Romano Bonaventura, who obtained the confirmation of all the rights of his see. Otto of Donengard. Ottone Candido, of the house of the Marchesi di Monferrato, sent on several occasions as legate by Innocent IV to Frederick II. Giacomo da Castellarquato. John of Toledo. Robert Gilwoodby, formerly Archbishop of Canterbury, poisoned at Viterbo. Bernard de Languisel. Matteo d'Ariquisparta, a former general of the Franciscans and a renowned theologian. Giovanni Minio, a former general of the Franciscans. Giacomo Arnaldo Durs, who became Pope John XXII. Bernard Castranet. Berenger Fredoli the Younger. Pierre d'Arabloy. Jean Raymond de Cominges. Bernard d'Albi. Guido Boulogne. Pietro Corsini, who adhered, later, to the Western Schism. Antonio Gattani. Antonio Corra. Louis, Duke of Berry. Branda Catiglione. Domingo Ram. Francesco Condalma. John Kemp, Bishop of Santa-Rufina only. Guillaume d'Estouteville. Juan Carvajal. Richard Olivier de Longueuil. Filippo Calandrini. Rodrigo Borgia, who became Pope Alexander VI, 1500 to 1700. George da Costa. Raffaele Riario. Domenico Grimani. Francesco Soderini. Niccolo Fieschi. Alessandro Farnes. Antonio Maria Sarchi del Monte. Giovanni Piccolomini. Giovanni Domenico de Cupis. Bonifacio Ferrero. Antonio Sanseverino. Marino Grimani. Giovanni Salviati. Gian Pietro Carafa, who became Pope Paul IV. Jean Dubele. Rodolfo Pio. Francesco Pisani. Federico Cesi. Giovanni Marone. Cristoforo Madrazzi. Alessandro Farnes. Fulvio Corneo. Giacomo Savelli. Giovanni Antonio Cerboloni. Inigo Avalos Aragon. Tolomeo Gallio. Girolamo Rusticucci. Girolamo Simoncelli. Domenico Pinelli. Girolamo Bernerio. Antonio Maria Gallio. Antonio Maria Sorli. Giovanni Evangelista Pallotta. Benedetto Giustiniani. Francesco Maria Bourbon del Monte. Francesco Sforza di Santa Fiora. Ottavio Bandini. Giovanni Battista Detti. Domenico Ginazzi. Carlo Emanuele Pio de Savoia. Marcello Lanti della Rovere. Pier Paolo Crescenzi. Francesco Senini da Salamandri. Giulio Roma. Carlo de Medici. Francesco Barberini. Marzio Giannetti. Francesco Maria Brancaccio, Alderico Carpegna, Cesare Facchinetti, Carlo Rossetti, Niccolo Albergati, Ludovici, Alderano Cibo, Pietro Vito Ottoboni, who became Pope Alexander VIII, Flavio Chigi Sr., Giacomo Franzoni, Palazzo Paluzzi Altieri degli Albertoni, Emmanuel Teodus de la Tour d'Auvergne de Bouillon, 1700 to 1967, Niccolo Acciarioli, Vincenzo M. Orsini, who became Pope Benedict XIII, Fabrizio Paolucci, Francesco Pignatelli, Pietro Ottoboni, Tommaso Raffo, Ludovico Pico della Mirandola, Annibale Albani, Pierluigi Carafa, Raniero Delci, Giovanni Antonio Guadagni, Francesco Borghese, Giuseppe Spinelli, Camillo Paolucci, Federico Marcello Lanti della Rovere, Gianfrancesco Albani, Carlo Rezzonico Jr., Leonardo Antonelli, Luigi Valenti Gonzaga, Alessandro Mattei, Giuseppe Doria Pamphili, Antonio Duniani, Giulio Maria della Somaglia, Michele Di Pietro, Bartolomeo Pacca, Pierfrancesco Galeffi, Emanuele de Gregorio, Gianfrancesco Falsacappa, Carlo Maria Pedicini, Vincenzo Macchi, Luigi Lambruscini, Mario Mattei, Costantino Patricinaro, Luigi Amat di San Filippo e Sorso, Camillo Di Pietro, Carlo Sacconi, Giovanni Battista Pitra, Luigi Origlia di Santo Stefano, Lucido Maria Parocchi, Serafino Vanatelli, Antonio Vico, Tommaso Pio Boggiani, Eugene Tisserand, Cardinal since 1967, Eugene Tisserand, Paolo Morella, Agostino Casaroli, Roger Echegaray, Diocesan Bishops Andrea Pangrazio, Pellegrino Tommaso Ronchi, Diego Natale Bona, Antonio Buon Cristiani, Gino Relai. In 1826, Civitavecchia was separated from the Diocese of Viterbo and Toscanella and united with that of Porto, but in 1854, with Corneto, it was made an independent see. Mention should be made of the Cardinal Bishop of Porto Luigi Lambruscini, who restored the cathedral and the episcopal palace. For the 16th century, the incumbency of prelates of the see was, as a rule, of short duration, because most of the cardinal bishops preferred the see of Ostia and Velletri, which they exchanged for their own as soon as possible. The Diocese of Caere, now Cerveteri, has been united with that of Porto since the 12th century. Caere was an ancient city, called at first Agila, where the sanctuaries of Rome and the Vestals were hidden during the invasion of the Gauls. The Etruscan tombs scattered about its territory are important archaeologically. Cerveteri had bishops of its own until the 11th century. The first was Adeodatus, assuming that he was not the Adeodatus who signed himself Bishop of Silva Candida in the Third Synod of Pope Symmachus. The last known was Benedictus, referred to in 1015 and 1029. The Diocese of Porto and Santa-Rufina has 18 parishes, with 4,600 inhabitants.